Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. The show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back for another episode of Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am coming at you guys today with a full heart, a grateful heart, and very, very, very excited to dive into today's content with you all. I definitely want you to brace yourself for today's episode. Today is one where it's probably going to be a little bit heavier. So trigger warning, there is going to be some statistics talking a little bit about suicide, domestic violence, sexual assault, trauma as a whole. And so if you are not in a safe place to listen to that kind of content, I definitely just want to give that warning in advance. Nonetheless, though, I think that should you choose to sit in that discomfort, if you are in a safe place, today's episode might be exactly what you're needing to hear. If you missed my last episode, number 144, 10 ways to reset your life, I definitely encourage you to check out that episode. I always find it interesting yet it's kind of set up this way on purpose, but it kind of goes in tandem with what we're talking about today in a different aspect. In today's episode, the goal that I really want to hone in on and focus on for you guys to feel by the time I get off the microphone today is to know that you're not alone. You are not alone in your experiences. You are not alone in your thoughts. You are not alone in your emotions. I went for a walk yesterday and it was a very, very beautiful evening. I went for a walk with my dog. We love going for walks every single evening. And typically I have my AirPods in and I will listen to a podcast. I will listen to a book. Sometimes I'm crazy and I listen to music. And yesterday I listened to things for half of my walk. And then for the second half, I wanted to just be present and not have anything going on in my consciousness. And so I decided to take my headphones out and notice what was surfacing for me. And prior to going to my walk, I had a session with a client, and it was a very deep, deep session. We talked a lot about her childhood experiences, a lot about her past, a lot about her traumas. And one of the main things she said when we get off that call, and she messaged me after, she said, I just feel so much less alone after that session. And it just made me think for myself and to reflect for myself of, wow, how many of us aren't healing because we feel like we're alone in our experiences and nobody will understand? And it's interesting because so many things that she was describing and explaining, I had also been through. And so I was able to really reiterate to her that not only through my experiences, but also through thousands of calls that I have done with clients in the past, although I don't want to lessen her story, because that is her story and only hers to share and to hold. But I do think it's important when we can say that you're not alone. And it doesn't take away from your experiences. It's not supposed to take away from your pain and the severity. However, when we feel less alone, there's a part of us that can just have a little more compassion. Because when we feel like we're alone, we don't want to be a burden. Shame becomes louder. We isolate ourselves, meaning we suppress our experiences. And so as I was walking, I was like, how did I feel before I dove into healing, before I started working with clients, before I started learning about trauma? I felt very alone. And even now, as a mental health professional, somebody who's worked with thousands of clients or thousands of sessions, hundreds of clients, I'm realizing that the main theme is that we all feel alone in our experiences. And so I woke up this morning, Saturday morning, and I'm like, I need to learn some statistics. My wheels were turning because I'm like, if I can make one person not feel alone just by letting them know that they're not alone, and then now we can get to so much deeper work and healing. What if I can make other people not feel alone through a podcast episode? And then what if you take hearing that and ripple that to somebody else, and then they feel less alone? It's almost like we put these blinders on for our life and we feel this need to self-protect. We feel this need to like cage in our experiences because we don't want to be viewed as different, as an outsider, as a, we don't want to feel shame about things we've experienced. But the interesting thing is, whenever somebody has opened up about something and we can relate to similar pains and wounds, the relationship and the bond actually becomes stronger. Yet as a society, we're so good at boxing our emotions. And it's like if we're not just okay and successful and happy in society's eyes, we are not worthy. We are less than. But the thing is, you guys, is that's such a pile of bullshit. We all have experiences. We all have traumas. We all have stuff that has hurt and has caused pain and that we have suppressed and that we have shame around. Every single one of us. The severity of that is, of course, going to be different. How that has impacted you is going to be different and look different, and your resilience to that and how you've stored that in your brain and your body is going to be different. But we're so naive when we walk around and we just think that we're the only ones dealing with things. So again, I wanted to hammer on some statistics, and it made me very, very, very emotional to do this. And although I already knew so many of these, it is heart-wrenching when you have the awareness of just how much pain and abuse is in our world. But I also think that it's important to talk about it, because if you don't talk about it and you turn a blind eye and you neglect it, change cannot happen. Change will not happen. And so I want to read through some of these statistics with you guys. And so again, I encourage you through this episode, come back to your body, come back to your breath, notice what surfaces for you. And if at any time this is too overwhelming, I encourage you to pause, come back if you'd like to, or tune in for my next episode. So here are some statistics. 1 in 8 children have witnessed some kind of abuse in the house. 1 in 8. 1 in 5 of us have a mental illness, and it's around all of us have mental health and experience mental health, but 1 in 5 of us have a diagnosed mental illness. And so I just want to throw in, here's the thing about statistics. This is what has been self-reported. This is kind of generalized guesstimates sometimes, because we could obviously never ask the entire population to submit this. And also you'd have to self-assign that to yourself, which has a whole other ballgame of shame attached to it. But so these statistics are actually higher than what is here. 1 sexual assault happens every 17 minutes. And when I worked at a sexual assault healing center, I'm pretty sure that number was actually higher or less than, however, whichever way you want to look at it, but way too often. Way too often. That's not talked about. 1 woman or girl is killed every 48 hours. This is obviously very hard to talk about. There is a suicide every 40 seconds. Just in the time that we have started this podcast episode to now, roughly 10 people have taken their life by suicide. Over 50% of us deal with anxiety and depression on a daily basis. I want us to just sit and acknowledge those statistics for a minute. And there are so many more that I could have thrown in here, but I'm emotional just talking about those 6 right there. So the point that I'm trying to make is pain, trauma, experiences, bullshit in our world happens way too often. Yet we as individuals feel so alone in our pain. We should not have to feel alone in knowing that if we are in a room with 20 people, you can bet that at least half of them are probably feeling anxiety in that moment. At least one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them have experienced some kind of abuse, are experiencing some kind of abuse, or know somebody who's experiencing or has experienced some kind of abuse. We always grew up being told, or I always grew up being told, you never know what somebody is going through. Yet it seems like as we grow up, we forget that. We forget that people are dealing with more than they will ever show. We are wired to suppress how we're truly feeling. We're wired to put on a facade, to pretend like we're okay, because we're wired to fit in. And if we truly showed our pain and showed our true emotions, we might not be accepted. We might be judged. We might be lashed out at, especially if you grew up and learned to believe that it was not safe to feel your emotions. It was not safe to heal. You never had capacity to do that. Your brain doesn't even know what that could possibly be like. And so today, I just want you to know and believe in your heart that you are not alone. And I'm sorry if you've never been validated, if you've never got the love and appreciation that you so deserve. I'm sorry for any experiences that you've had to gone through that hurt so bad. I'm sorry if there was no one ever there to tell you that it's going to be okay. And I promise you that although it doesn't always feel like it, you are not alone. And you are so deserving to be validated, to be loved, to be acknowledged so that you can heal. I wanted to take things from a neuroscience approach a little bit. And I'm not an expert in this. I just learned about it in the last couple of days, but I think that it's really, really helpful because this was helpful for me to realize. The thing is the reason that we feel alone is often because we have a lot of shame. And so I was very curious about, where does shame start in the brain? Where does it form? Why does it exist? Why do we have it outside of just an emotional perspective? I knew that there had to be a reason why shame is so front of the line when we're experiencing hard situations. Turns out it has an actual name. There is a part of our brain that is completely focused on this emotional response. And it is a big word that I'm probably going to butcher, but I'm going to try myself. The abbreviation is ACC. If you've ever heard of your ACC, that's what it's talking about. And it's basically your anterior cingulate cortex. It is a part of our brain, a very, very tiny part of our brain that is closer to the frontal part of our brain. And it is responsible to dictate the emotional response to things that has the potential for embarrassment. We have a part of our brain designed for that. It does so many other things. I definitely encourage you, if you're interested in this stuff, if you're a nerd like me with the brain, Google, do some digging on the ACC. It's quite interesting. But a large part of what it does is it protects us and it dictates when there's cause for embarrassment. And here's the thing. There was a study done. Her name is Virginia Storm, and she basically works at the Memory and Aging Center of the University of California. And I read a full thesis paper that she did this morning. And it was very, very, very interesting, very overwhelming. And to put it very surface level, she basically reported that changes in the brain, AKA trauma, emotional overload, abuse, neglect, whatever, insert thing here, can change the brain, and it can influence how much shame a person feels. And the thing is at a very high level, the more that we've experienced, the more trauma we've experienced, the more things, the more shame we are naturally wired to have. And so it makes sense that those of us that have the highest ACE score, the most trauma, the most neglect, the most stuff in our past, there's a word I was trying to think of that I couldn't land on there. The most exposure, I will say, the more vulnerable you are, it's actually harder to express and to heal because your brain has overcorrected so much so that you might not even have the capability to know that you're shameful about something. And so circling back, what I truly believe is going to be the biggest difference is when we stop being naive that our experiences have hurt us and we validate that for ourselves. And I know that with all of this, trauma can cause us to suppress memories. It can cause us to have pain receptors blocked, meaning we don't really have that emotional connection to what has happened. So we can kind of numb out our experiences. There's so many levels to this. And that is why I say all the time, whether you think you have experiences or not that have hurt you, we could all benefit from therapy. We could all benefit from experiencing and visiting our past. Because if everything that I just said is actually true, which it is, there's also a part of us that could never, ever heal because it isn't picking up that cue that is what's next. That is our responsibility. And also when we've experienced things and we've just become so used to the byproduct of them, how they've made us feel, and we get so used to that, it's almost like that becomes our comfort zone. I've had clients before that have told me that once healing is started, they want to stop because all they know is feeling their depression. All they know is living with anxiety. All they know is living in havoc and chaos. And so living an alternative life is actually more overwhelming than staying and catastrophizing with their current life. And so there are so many dualities to this. But here's again, for the 10th time, what I want you to hear today. I want your heart to hear today. If your brain can't hear it, I want your heart to listen up. You are not alone. You are not different from anybody else. Here's what I told my client yesterday, because she basically expressed to me, I am alone in what I've experienced. And although I validated and said, yeah, that is your story. That is your experience. But how that has impacted you, everything you're describing to me, you're not as alone as you think. You're not as different as you think. Here's what I always like to tell myself, and I think is very, very validating. If you are here and you are listening to this, you are present, you have overcome physically 100% of the things that you've been through. Now, that might still be in your body, that might still be in your mind, and it is not healed yet, but you physically have overcome it and you are here. And that takes a lot. That is so much easier said than done. And so I want you to know how proud I am of you for being here. Even if hearing that feels icky and weird, I want to just hold that space for you. You're so worthy to heal. And I'm so sorry if you've never been told that before. Here's what I want you to know in closing for today. Proper support does exist. Healing and storing your past properly can happen. But the only one that can make that happen is you. And I know that that can be really overwhelming. And so I encourage you, if you need to actually encourage it regardless, lean on someone that you trust to support you through this. Because in fact, they probably also are needing some support. But I can just imagine a world, and this is my mission, this is what inspires me to show up here every single week, twice a week, is that I do believe in a world where we look at trauma with less stigma, with less shame, where we're able to talk about our experiences. And instead of triggering each other, we can be there to process for each other, to be able to have these open dialogue conversations without feeling isolated and alone and like you're going to be rejected. Whenever somebody comes to me and is vulnerable and shares their past, I cannot express and thank them enough for that, because I know that that is one of the hardest things in the whole wide world to do. I don't want you to feel alone. And I encourage you right now to just take a second, come back to your body, close your eyes if possible for just a second. Maybe put your hand on your heart if that is in your practice. And I want you to just notice. I want you to notice what's surfacing. I want you to honor any experiences that are popping up into your consciousness, any body sensations you might be feeling. And know that if you're feeling that, you are alive and you are here. And everything that your body is causing you to feel right now, it is causing you to feel that for a reason. Our body communicates so much more to us than our mind can process and vocalize to us. Our body carries so much of our stress and experiences within it. One of my favorite books I talk about all the time, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. That is largely what that book is about. It is how trauma is stored in the body. So if you are listening to this, just take a second, come back, validate, and just thank yourself for even sitting through this very uncomfortable conversation. It is uncomfortable, but it is so necessary. And these are some of my favorite things to talk about, because I needed to hear these things at one point in time in my life, and I still do now. I am someone who suppresses the hell out of how I'm feeling because I don't want anybody around me to feel like they need to carry the burden of my wounds. Yet that's not serving anybody. And in fact, if those around you and in your circle are not supportive of you and your experiences and how you respond to that, if you're doing so in a healthy way, they're probably not the right people for you. You should be able to feel safe, to be able to express, and to get validated and loved on in those moments, not shamed or blamed or suppressed. And I hope that you know that you're so worthy of that. And again, I'm sorry if you never received that. So I'm sending you guys all so much extra love today. Please reach out if you are needing any support. I can even support you one-on-one or support you in connecting you with someone that you can work with one-on-one. My goal and my mission is so much bigger than just myself. Yes, it has to start with myself first, but again, I believe in a world where healing is normalized, where talking about these things is normalized, where these statistics can become less and less and less, but they will continue to perpetuate if we do not shed light on the fact that they are happening. So I encourage you to take a moment after today's episode, notice yourself, notice your emotions, notice what's surfacing, and tend to it as best as possible. I encourage you to tune in on Thursday. We're going to talk all about 10 different ways to manage your stress. Stress is a large component that is a byproduct of trauma and our experiences. And that is also something that is a crisis right now that we are not talking about. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. All the love to you. If you have not been told lately, I love you. I am so proud of you. I am so grateful for you. And I look forward to chatting with you every single week. Chat with you on Thursday. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.